So I'd like to start the second part. In this part, we are going to talk about some case studies related to more specified questions. And the first part of this part was supposed Dr. Dori Gold was supposed to be here. He was the CEO of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. He was the Israeli ambassador to the UN and a prime minister consultant, but unfortunately he couldn't make it. So that's why we are going to give the floor to Mrs. Limor Livnat. That she is, fortunately, we're lucky to have her here, and she will probably have very interesting things to tell us. She's a former politician. She's been member of the Knesset for many years. She was Minister of Education, Minister of Culture and Sport, and Minister of Communication. And we know that's a critical role in today's reality. And today she is the CEO of the Foundation for Holocaust Survivors, and amongst other things she's been up to. And we will listen to her opinion about issues we discussed earlier from different perspectives. The topic. The main topic is Ukraine as a case study. She'll speak about morality versus interests with respect to the war in the Ukraine. She'll speak about it in general, and she will speak about the refugees problem and how is the state of Israel handles it. The floor is yours. So I don't know what to start with. Refugees? Okay, it's your decision to make. No, I didn't prepare a speech because it was supposed to be a debate with Dori, but since I was asked to talk about the refugees and about the practical, moral aspect of our relationships with Russia and the Ukraine. So perhaps I'll say a few words. How much time do we have? About 10 minutes. About 10 minutes. Okay. So let me start with the refugees. So first of all, the refugees problem. Of course, you cannot avoid remembering. I know everybody remembers. There are many young people here in this room, but but in terms of their chronological age, we all remember the first thing that former Prime Minister Menachem Begin did when he decided to absorb 66 Vietnamese who managed to save themselves and arrived in Israel. And during the 70s, he decided to allow several other refugees to enter Israel, refugees from Vietnam. I'm repeating this example not because I think you're unaware of it, but that actually marks or symbolizes the morality, Jewish morality, as Begin saw, and in the most refined way, if you wish, the most precise way, as any person, ordinary, sensitive person, and leaders as well, or a public figure, needs to see when there is someone in distress. And they were, of course, the refugees from Vietnam were on this boat. They were persecuted. And they needed the rescue. So that should be our moral example and guidelines to everybody. But ever since then, a lot has happened, of course. And things happened in Israel, and Israel in 2021 is different from Israel back then. The refugees from the Ukraine are different from the refugees from Vietnam, and today our identity as a Jewish state has to do with a question. We need to deal with this question. We are dealing with this question. It's not simple at all. And we haven't yet completed the discussion and amongst ourselves. So there are many disagreements regarding this identity. The question is whether we want to be a state that gives shelters to infiltrators, refugees, asylum seekers. What kind of a state do we want to be? What kind of a state should we be? I think we should be a Jewish state. But there are many other people who live here, people who are not Jews. There is a minority of more than 20%, over 20% of Israeli Arabs. They're entitled to equal rights, civil rights. But besides Israeli Arabs, there are other minorities as well. And then when we reach to the question of Ukraine, so there are some of them who are entitled to the law of return, and they came here and they are coming, and they will come in the future maybe. But besides that, there is another question we have to ask ourselves: how many refugees we as a state, and we want to take a part in this in this mission, because there are other countries such as European countries that actually set some limits. For example, U.S. made some decisions regarding its visa, etc., and Canada, but still they limited the number of refugees from Ukraine. So you don't really need a visa to enter Israel, but still, what are we going to do? So how are we going to set some limits? And about 10,000 or 11,000 of them arrived, and another 5,000 in addition to those who are entitled to the law of return. So do we need to increase the quota? I think we need to limit it. I think we should... We need to set some limits, okay? Maybe I'm not going to use the word quota, but limits. We should actually set a maximum number. It's the correct thing to do in this case. Yes, we are going to absorb some refugees from Ukraine, but there is a limit. Because we, as it is, we live in this country which is so... with so many minorities coming from different places in the world. And now you raised another point which has to do with morality, with regards to our approach, our moral approach in the context of this war that is currently with regards to the war Putin started. So it's a very complicated situation for Israel. So indeed, we are trying to be very cautious here, and we try to please both sides, and it's not simple for us. On the one hand, we support Ukraine, and on the other hand, we are very, very cautious when it comes to Russia. So we support certain statements. I read on my way here, I read that there are claims by some people in Ukraine that we didn't supply them with all, we didn't meet our promises, we didn't send them enough humanitarian equipment. And here we have to ask the question, Russia is not our enemy. Russia is, of course, it supports our enemies in the north, in Syria, but on the other hand, when we attack the Syrians and their proxies in the north, the Russians allow us to do it. They don't really. They actually they allow us to do it, and this is a very sensitive. It's very sensitive. And currently, Bennett allowed or proposed his mediation to become as a mediator, and so they thought so we were considered almost the only state that could speak both with the Ukrainians and the Russians, but that wasn't the first time it happened. In previous years, at the time that Russia invaded Crimea, Israel did not say a word. Israel just kept silent, sat on the fence until 2018 when the Americans put pressure on us, and then we voted against them in the UN. So throughout the years we always played this game. We always dance this dance of to behave this way or that way, and probably there's no other choice for us because we have to actually hold on to these options. We have to be able to react to actually we want to safeguard the Israeli citizens. We must have this ability to react in the north. We must have the ability to react vis-a-vis the Iranians and along the Syrian border and vis-a-vis Syria itself. So we cannot behave any differently. So humanitarian, if you think about humanitarian aspect, of course, we tend to support the Ukrainians. Of course, the Russians kill innocent people, and thousands of people and civilians and women and children were massacred there. But the humanitarian element here, of course, our heart, we are devastated when we see it. But we see that the West is in no hurry. Okay, they supply them, they give them some weapons, ammunition, etc. But what is the West doing? Actually, do they charge head on to protect Ukraine? Not really. Do we need to be the ones who do that? Us, this small country of Israel, and we are in this situation. Are we the ones who need to fight against the Russians, or are we the ones that should announce publicly that we resent the Russians or what the Russians are doing? I doubt it. I think that our conduct so far has been. It makes sense. It makes sense. It's very. It's a smart. That is the smart thing to do. It's unpleasant. It's true. But the bottom line is that I think that we need to maintain our own interest, and we need to find a balance because there are many considerations. There are interests of the State of Israel. We have a duty, an obligation to take into account, first and foremost, the State of Israel's interests and the Israeli citizens' interest. And the most important interest is, as I said, to dance this dance, to actually walk on tiptoes between Russia and Ukraine, and to know that we can, as, I don't know, according to foreign publications, perhaps Bennett mentioned it yesterday. I don't know, he said something that he shouldn't have, in my opinion. I don't think we should talk that much. And he said something about something we did in Syria, but we need to do more and talk less, and we need to do what's best for Israel. That's it. Thank you. Any questions or any comments? There are 3 phases in this panel. So I'm going to discuss 3 different topics, but following what we've heard, any comments, because the speaker discussed several perspectives. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you. very important points.